Her engagement was canceled, and she randomly married a poor man unaware he was a mysterious millionaire. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel shimmered under the golden glow of chandeliers. The air was thick with the scent of roses, champagne, and the quiet murmur of high society chatter. Everything was perfect, exactly as Sophia had imagined her engagement party to be. She stood near the center of the room, her fingers nervously tracing the stem of her champagne flute, her heart beating a little faster in excitement. Tonight, in front of everyone, she and Daniel would finally announce their engagement. Yet as she glanced at her diamond-studded watch, a gift from Daniel on their 6-month anniversary, a familiar unease settled in her stomach. "He's just running late," she whispered to herself, smoothing down the delicate lace of her pale, blue Dior gown. "He always does this." Across the room, her mother caught her eye, giving a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Eleanor Davenport had orchestrated this match with the precision of a military strategist. The Westbrook connection would elevate their family's standing, secure their legacy in New York's social hierarchy. Love had been a secondary consideration, if considered at all. "He'll be here," Sophia repeated, this time more to convince herself. Wasn't this what she wanted? What she'd been raised for? The heavy doors to the ballroom swung open. Heads turned, conversations paused, and Sophia's practiced smile froze on her face. Daniel walked in, tall, impeccably dressed in a custom Tom Ford suit. But he wasn't alone. His hand was intertwined with Lisa Carter's, daughter of his most important business partner. Lisa, stunning in a blood-red gown that clung to her curves like a second skin, wore a smirk that told Sophia everything she needed to know before a single word was spoken. The room fell silent. A waiter froze mid-pour, champagne spilling onto pristine linen. Cameras from the society press swiveled, capturing the unfolding drama. "Daniel." Sophia's voice emerged as a whisper, barely audible over the tension filling the room. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes meeting hers with chilling indifference. There was no remorse there, no hesitation, just cold calculation. "Sophia," he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "I can't marry you." The words hit her like physical blows. Her lungs seemed to forget how to draw breath. What are you saying?" she managed, her voice breaking despite her desperate attempt to maintain composure. Daniel exhaled, as if her confusion was merely an inconvenience. "Let's be honest here, Sophia. You have nothing to offer me." Her stomach twisted into knots. "I don't understand. You proposed to me." Daniel's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Did I, though? Or was it just a conversation our families arranged?" He shrugged, dismissive. "I needed the leverage of your family's name, but now..." His eyes flicked to Lisa. "Now I have better options." Lisa chuckled softly, squeezing Daniel's arm possessively. "He means me," she stage whispered, as if Sophia might not have understood. "This is a joke, right?" Sophia whispered, her vision blurring with unshed tears. Part of her was still waiting for the punchline, for this nightmare to dissolve. Daniel's eyes hardened. "I never loved you, Sophia," he said, his voice sharp and cutting. "You were just a stepping stone, and now I don't need you anymore." A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. The shattering sound matched the breaking of something inside Sophia's chest. Her hands trembled as she stared at him, searching for any sign that this wasn't real, that this wasn't happening. But Daniel just smirked, completely unbothered by the devastation he was causing. Lisa tilted her head, faux sympathy dripping from her voice. "You're a sweet girl, Sophia, but let's be real. You don't belong in Daniel's world. You never did." Sophia's entire body went cold. 100 pairs of eyes were on her, watching, waiting to see how she would crumble. She could feel the whispers. Poor girl. So embarrassing. Did she really think he loved her? "Sophia." Her mother's voice cut through the suffocating silence. Sophia turned slowly, hoping, just this once, that her mother would defend her, comfort her, choose her. But the look on Eleanor Davenport's face wasn't one of concern. It was disgust, as if Sophia herself had orchestrated this humiliation. "You have humiliated us," her mother said, voice low and sharp as a blade. Sophia's mouth parted in shock. I didn't. If you can't secure a husband with wealth and power, her mother continued coldly, then you're no longer a daughter of mine. The final blow. Sophia staggered back as if physically struck. Her mother turned away, leaving her alone in a room full of people. Her entire world had just shattered into irreparable pieces. The streets of Manhattan were unforgiving at night, especially when you were walking alone in an evening gown that no longer felt like it belonged to you. Sophia's heels clicked against the pavement, each step a painful reminder of how far she had fallen in a single evening. Rain had started to fall, gentle at first, then harder, as if the sky itself was weeping for her. She didn't bother seeking shelter. The cold droplets, mingling with her tears, felt appropriate somehow. Her feet ached, the delicate shoes digging into her skin, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Not when every time she closed her eyes, she could still hear Daniel's voice, cold and final. I never loved you. Her mother's voice wasn't far behind, slicing through her already broken heart. You are no longer a daughter of mine. A shaky breath escaped her lips as she stumbled forward, the crisp night air burning her lungs. The diamond engagement ring that had once sat proudly on her finger was gone, left abandoned on the marble floor of the ballroom. She had nothing now, no fiancé, no family, no future. She didn't know how long she wandered, but eventually the warm glow of a small, dimly lit bar pulled her in. It wasn't the kind of place she normally would have set foot in, too old, too quiet, too unfamiliar, but right now she didn't care. She just needed a drink. The bartender barely glanced at her as she slid onto the worn-out stool, her dress out of place against the peeling wood and flickering neon lights. Whiskey, she muttered, neat. The bartender raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, pouring her a glass before stepping away. Sophia downed the first sip, wincing as the burns seared down her throat. Good. She wanted to hurt. You don't seem like the whiskey type. A voice, smooth, deep, edged with curiosity, broke through her thoughts. Sophia turned her head and found herself looking at a man sitting a few stools away. He was not the kind of man she was used to. No tailored suit, no designer watch. Instead, he wore a plain dark jacket over a simple gray t-shirt, his hair slightly tousled, as if he didn't care to keep it perfectly styled. But his eyes, they were striking. Deep, intelligent, observant. As if he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls to the broken woman beneath. Maybe I wasn't before, Sophia muttered, taking another sip. But people change. The man tilted his head, studying her with those penetrating eyes. Rough night. She let out a bitter laugh. You could say that. For some reason, she found herself talking. The whiskey loosening the pain lodged in her chest. She told him everything about the engagement, the betrayal, the humiliation. She didn't know why. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because he wouldn't judge her the way the rest of the world did. The man listened, never interrupting, just watching her with those dark, knowing eyes. And then, when she finished, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bar. If you need a husband, he said casually, I'm right here. Sophia blinked, then she laughed, really laughed for what felt like the first time in years. You, she teased, eyes glimmering with drunken amusement. Want to marry me? The man smiled, a slow, lazy curve of his lips that hinted at secrets she couldn't begin to fathom. Why not? You need a husband. I don't have anything better to do. It was crazy, completely insane. And yet, something in Sophia's chest stirred. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the heartbreak. Maybe it was the fact that for the first time tonight, she felt like she was in control of her own fate. So she lifted her glass in a mock toast and grinned, a reckless freedom taking hold of her. All right, stranger, let's get married. His name, she discovered as they stumbled into a 24-hour chapel 2 hours later, was Liam. Just Liam. No last name offered, no history shared. But his hand was warm around hers as they exchanged $20 rings. And when he kissed her, a gentle, questioning kiss that asked for nothing, Sophia felt something spark to life in the hollow space where her heart had been. For the first time in her life, she had made a choice entirely her own. Not her mother's, not society's, not what was expected of Sophia Davenport. Just hers. Sophia woke with a pounding headache and an unsettling sense of wrongness. The sheets beneath her weren't the Egyptian cotton she was accustomed to. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something unfamiliar. And then she saw it. A cheap silver ring on her left hand. Her stomach dropped. She turned her head slowly, too scared of what she would find. And there he was, the stranger from the bar. Liam, lying next to her, shirtless, one arm draped lazily over his chest, his breathing steady. "Oh my God," she whispered, memories of the previous night flooding back. The chapel, the vows, the marriage license she'd signed with a flourish and a drunken giggle. She was married. To a complete stranger. Sophia sat on the edge of the worn-out couch an hour later, staring at the peeling paint on the walls. The dim lighting cast long shadows across the small apartment. This was her new home. She still wasn't sure how it had come to this, how she had gone from silk sheets and marble floors to this tiny, cluttered space with creaky wooden floors and a kitchen barely big enough for one person. How she had gone from being Sophia Davenport, the glamorous fiancé of a wealthy businessman, to Sophia, whatever her last name was now. She glanced down at the cheap silver ring on her finger, as if expecting it to vanish and take this surreal nightmare with it. But it didn't. Instead, there was movement from the small kitchenette. She turned her head and saw Liam, her husband, the stranger she had agreed to marry in a drunken haze, standing by the stove, dressed in nothing but a pair of sweatpants, his back turned to her as he flipped something in a pan. The scent of buttery eggs and toast filled the apartment, making her stomach grumble before she could stop it. Liam glanced over his shoulder, catching her staring. "Morning, wifey," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. Sophia groaned and covered her face with her hands. "I was hoping this was just a bad dream." Liam chuckled, turning back to the stove. "Nope, it's real. You married a stranger. Congrats." Sophia peeked through her fingers. "And you're completely okay with this?" He shrugged, placing 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast on the tiny dining table. "I'm a man of my word. You needed a husband, I delivered." Sophia exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "This is insane." Liam slid into the chair across from her, watching her carefully. "Eat first. Then we can talk about how much you regret your choices." She scowled at him, but picked up her fork anyway. The eggs were perfect, fluffy, seasoned just right. It surprised her, though she wasn't sure why. Perhaps she'd expected a man who lived in such a modest apartment to be incapable of cooking a decent meal. "So," Liam said after they'd eaten in silence for a few minutes, "what's the plan?" "Plan? You know, for your new life. Since your old one." He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Sophia set down her fork, reality crashing over her anew. "I don't have one," she admitted, her voice small. "I've never had to have one. Everything was always arranged." Something flickered in Liam's eyes, not pity, but understanding. "Well, you got time to figure it out. No rush. And what about?" She gestured between them. "This. Us. This marriage." Liam leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What about it? Shouldn't we, I don't know, annul it or something?" He raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you want?" The question caught her off guard. Was that what she wanted? To return to a world that had rejected her so completely? She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Her credit cards would be canceled by now. Her mother would have seen to that. "I don't know what I want," she finally said, and it was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever admitted. Liam nodded, as if her confusion made perfect sense. "Then stay until you figure it out. I've got a spare room. It's small, but it's yours if you want it." "Why?" Sophia asked, genuinely perplexed. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." A slow smile spread across his face. "Maybe I'm just a nice guy. Or maybe I've always wanted a roommate who looks good in evening gowns." Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling back. The reality of her situation hit hard over the next few days. She had nothing, no access to her family's money, no designer clothes beyond what she'd been wearing that night, no housekeepers to clean up after her. She had to wash dishes, do laundry, and worst of all, she had to budget. She had never budgeted in her life. The first time she followed Liam to the grocery store, She had reached for a $12 bottle of organic water, only for him to raise an eyebrow and put it back. "You're not a Davenport anymore, princess," he said, tossing a 99-cent bottle into the cart instead. "Welcome to the real world." Sophia huffed, but said nothing. It was humiliating, frustrating, and yet oddly freeing. For the first time, there were no expectations, no pressure to be the perfect socialite, no judgmental eyes watching her every move. "I need a job," she announced one evening, a week into their strange arrangement. Liam looked up from a book he was reading, surprise evident on his face. "You do?" "Yes. I can't just exist here. I need to contribute something." She twisted her hands in her lap. "The problem is, I don't know how to do anything useful." Liam set his book down. "That's not true. What did you study in college?" Sophia bit her lip. "Art history." He nodded thoughtfully. "Any internships?" "Volunteer work. I organized charity galas," she offered. "Managed guest lists, coordinated with vendors, that sort of thing." "Event planning," Liam said. "That's a skill." "Is it?" "Absolutely. Organization, communication, attention to detail. Those are valuable in any workplace." Sophia considered this. She'd never thought of her social obligations as actual work, but perhaps they had prepared her for something after all. The next day, Liam helped her create a resume. It was sparse, but he showed her how to emphasize her strengths, how to present her experiences in a way that highlighted transferable skills. By the end of the week, she had an interview at a small local gallery that needed an assistant. "How do I look?" she asked Liam the morning of her interview, smoothing down the simple black dress she'd purchased from a department store. On sale, with money she'd made selling the designer earrings she'd been wearing the night of her engagement party. Liam looked up from his coffee, his eyes traveling over her with an appreciation that made her cheeks warm. Like someone who's going to nail that interview. She did. The gallery owner, a woman named Elaine with silver streak hair and kind eyes, hired her on the spot. The pay was modest, but it was hers, earned, not given. And then there was Liam. Despite his teasing, he never let her struggle alone. When she burned their dinner, he just laughed and ordered takeout. When she tripped over a loose floorboard, he was there to catch her before she could hit the ground. One rainy evening, when the power went out and she sat curled up on the couch feeling more lost than ever, Liam simply grabbed a blanket, draped it over her shoulders, and sat beside her in silence. He didn't pity her. He just understood. "Tell me something about yourself," she said softly, watching his profile in the glow of the emergency candle they'd lit. "Something real." Liam was quiet for a moment. "I grew up with nothing," he finally said. "My mom worked 3 jobs. We moved a lot. Never stayed in one place long enough to call a home. And now," he shrugged, "now I have this place. It's not much, but it's mine. Stable. Permanent." "What do you do?" "For work, I mean." It occurred to Sophia that she'd never asked, too wrapped up in her own drama. "I consult," he said vaguely. "Freelance stuff." "What kind of consulting?" A small smile played on his lips. "The kind that pays the bills." Sophia rolled her eyes. "Very mysterious." "I like to maintain an air of intrigue," he teased. "Keeps the marriage exciting." Their eyes met in the candlelight, and something shifted between them. A recognition, perhaps, that this arrangement, strange as it was, had become something neither of them had expected. Comfortable. Safe. Slowly, very slowly, Sophia began to realize that maybe she wasn't as lost as she thought. Maybe, in losing everything she'd once valued, she'd gained something far more precious: freedom. The freedom to discover who she really was, beyond the expectations that had defined her entire life. And as she watched Liam across the tiny living room, his face half shadowed in the candlelight, she wondered if perhaps she'd gained something else too. Something she hadn't even known to look for. Sophia had always prided herself on her ability to read people. Growing up in high society, she had learned to recognize the subtle tells, the way someone carried themselves, the slight hesitation in their voice when they lied, the flicker of greed in their eyes when they wanted something. But Liam didn't make sense. At first, she had accepted that he was just a regular guy, someone who lived paycheck to paycheck, someone who didn't care for luxury or extravagance. But little things didn't add up. It started with the wine. One evening, Liam brought home a bottle of red wine. Nothing fancy, just something he had grabbed from the store, or so he claimed. Sophia, having grown up in a world where people debated vintage versus terroir over brunch, had smirked. "Let me guess," she teased, curling up on the couch with a book. "You're a beer guy, aren't you?" Liam chuckled, but said nothing as he poured himself a glass. Then, to her shock, he swirled the wine in his glass, examined the color under the light, took a deep inhale, and sipped it like a sommelier. Sophia's brows furrowed. "What was that? What was what?" Liam asked innocently, taking another sip. "That," she gestured at his glass. "That was a proper wine tasting technique." Liam smirked over the rim of his glass. "Maybe I just like wine." Sophia narrowed her eyes. Normal guys, especially ones who lived in apartments with leaky faucets and secondhand furniture, didn't do that. They didn't handle wine like they'd been trained at a vineyard in Bordeaux. Then there was the car incident. A few days later, as they walked past a luxury car dealership, she had joked, "If you could have any car in the world, what would it be?" Liam barely hesitated. "Aston Martin DBS Superleggera," he said casually. V12 engine, 715 horsepower, top speed of 211 miles per hour. Carbon fiber body, adaptive suspension. 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Sophia stared at him. Most guys she knew wouldn't even remember the name of that car, let alone its specs with such precision. Liam noticed her look and shrugged. "What? I like cars." Sophia let it slide, but her suspicions were growing. Who was this man she had married? What else was he hiding? The breaking point came one evening while Liam was in the shower. Sophia was looking for a pen in the small wooden drawer of their kitchen table when she saw it. A thick stack of crisp $100 bills. Her heart stopped. Liam was broke, wasn't he? They budgeted for groceries, lived in a rundown apartment, ate takeout only on special occasions. So where did this come from? She carefully picked up the stack, running her fingers over the smooth paper. It wasn't just a few bills. There had to be at least $10,000 sitting in that drawer. Before she could process it, Liam's voice came from behind her. "Looking for something?" Sophia jumped, nearly dropping the money. Liam was leaning against the doorway, towel slung around his neck, arms crossed. Droplets of water still clung to his bare chest, but it was his eyes that caught her attention, suddenly sharp, watchful. She turned to him, eyes filled with confusion. Where did this come from? Liam simply walked over, took the stack from her hands, and placed it back into the drawer, closing it without a word. Sophia stared at him. Liam. He finally met her gaze, that same infuriating smirk playing on his lips. "Does it matter?" Sophia blinked. "Of course it matters. We live like we can barely afford rent, but you have stacks of cash just lying around." Liam shrugged, running a hand through his damp hair. "I don't like wasting money. That's not an answer." He chuckled, stepping closer. "Didn't you marry me because you loved me for who I am, not for what I have?" Sophia's breath hitched. That's what she had said, that money didn't matter, that she didn't care about wealth. But now, standing in front of him, knowing there was something he wasn't telling her, she felt uneasy. Liam lifted her chin slightly with his fingers, his voice softer now. "Trust me, Sophia," he murmured. "Everything will make sense soon enough." But would it? Sophia's stomach twisted. She had seen the signs. The way Liam never seemed worried about money despite them living in a rundown apartment. The way he casually rattled off car specifications like a collector. The way he handled wine like a seasoned sommelier. And now a hidden stash of money. A horrifying thought crept into her mind. Was Liam involved in something illegal? The floor creaked beneath her as she shifted her weight. Liam's head snapped up, his entire demeanor changing in an instant. Alert, tense, almost predatory. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, Liam closed the drawer, his fingers tightening around the edge, his jaw clenched, his expression unreadable. Sophia forced herself to find her voice. "Where did that money come from?" Liam sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "It's not what you think, Sophia." Her chest tightened. "Then explain it to me." Liam hesitated for a second, and that second was enough to feed her growing suspicions. "Are you?" Sophia swallowed hard, the question sticking in her throat. Are you in some kind of trouble? Liam's gaze darkened. No. Then why are you hiding stacks of cash? Her voice rose, frustration and fear mingling. You act like we can barely afford groceries, but you have thousands of dollars sitting in a drawer. What the hell is going on? Liam exhaled sharply, frustration flickering across his face. Sophia, just trust me. Trust you, she scoffed, throwing her hands up. How can I trust you when you keep secrets from me? Liam's eyes flashed. I could ask you the same thing. You married me thinking I was just some poor guy, and that was fine, right? But now, the moment you see money, you assume the worst. Sophia opened her mouth, but Liam cut her off. You think I'm a criminal? He snapped, hurt evident beneath his anger. Sophia flinched, guilt washing over her. She hadn't said it outright, but had she implied it? Had she jumped to that conclusion too quickly? Liam shook his head, his voice quieter now, but laced with something raw. I thought you saw me for who I was, not for what I had or didn't have. Sophia's throat tightened. I do, she whispered, but even to her own ears, it sounded weak. Liam's jaw worked, his hands curling into fists before he turned away. Then act like it, he muttered, walking out of the kitchen and leaving her standing there, more confused than ever. The next day, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something big. Liam had secrets, and she needed to know what they were, not just out of curiosity, but because whatever he was hiding could affect her too. She was his wife, after all, even if their marriage had begun as a drunken impulse. That afternoon, while sorting through some old books in their apartment, Liam had gone out early, still distant after their argument. She found a yellowed newspaper clipping tucked between the pages. Her pulse sped up as she carefully unfolded it. It was an old business article dated 3 years ago, and right there in the center of the page was a photo of Liam, or at least someone who looked exactly like him. But the name beneath the photo wasn't Liam Carter or Liam Smith or whatever surname he might have given at their hasty wedding. It was Liam Alexander Sterling. Her fingers trembled as she read the headline. Billionaire heir disappears without a trace. The mystery of Liam Sterling. Sophia's blood ran cold. She scanned the article quickly, absorbing fragments of information that painted a picture she could scarcely believe. Liam Alexander Sterling, sole heir to the Sterling Empire, one of the most powerful conglomerates in the country with investments in real estate, technology, and luxury brands. 3 years ago, following a family scandal involving his father, Liam had vanished. No credit card trails, no social media activity, nothing. It was as if he had simply decided to disappear from his life of privilege. A photo comparison left no doubt. Her Liam and Liam Sterling were the same person. Sophia sat back, her mind reeling. This wasn't just a secret. This was an entirely hidden identity. Her husband wasn't just some guy with unexplained cash. He was one of the wealthiest men in America, living in a rundown apartment, pretending to be someone he wasn't. And she had married him. The door opened, and Sophia's head snapped up. Liam walked in, grocery bags in hand, looking more relaxed than he had the night before. When he saw her sitting there, he smiled, that same easy smile that had drawn her in at the bar. Hey, I got that pasta you like, he said, setting the bags on the counter. Thought we could. He stopped when he noticed the newspaper clipping in her hands. His smile faded, replaced by an expression she couldn't quite read. Not surprise, not anger, but something like resignation. Sophia held up the article, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam Alexander Sterling. The words hung in the air between them, heavy, suffocating. Liam didn't move, didn't speak. His eyes, those eyes that had always seemed to see right through her, now revealed nothing. That's your real name, isn't it? Sophia asked, her voice stronger now, demanding the truth. Liam exhaled softly and ran a hand through his hair, his face unreadable. What did you find that? He asked, his voice calm. That's not the point, Liam, she snapped, standing up, the article crumpling slightly in her grip. The point is, you lied to me. You let me believe you were just some regular guy, when in reality, you're a billionaire. Liam said nothing for a moment, just watched her with those penetrating eyes. Then he sighed and leaned against the counter, folding his arms across his chest. "Because I didn't want you to love me for my money," he said simply. Sophia froze, his words cutting through her anger. His voice was steady, honest, raw. "You think I haven't seen it before?" he continued, a hint of bitterness creeping into his tone. "People pretending to care, women who looked at me like I was a prize instead of a person." His eyes darkened with memories. "I needed to know what it was like to be loved for who I am, not what I'm worth." Sophia's breath hitched, the truth of it cutting deep. She had been raised in a world where money meant everything, where marriages were business arrangements, where love was secondary to status. She had almost married Daniel, a man who had seen her as nothing more than a stepping stone to greater power. And now, standing in front of her, was Liam, a man who had chosen to walk away from wealth, from privilege, from power, all to find something real. And he had chosen her. A tear slipped down her cheek as the realization hit her. "Why me?" she whispered. "Of all the women in that bar, why did you offer to marry me?" Liam's expression softened. "Because you were the first person who looked at me, really looked at me, and didn't see dollar signs. You were hurt, broken, but still genuine. Real." He took a step toward her. "I didn't plan to marry anyone that night, Sophia. But something about you. I couldn't let you walk away." Sophia's heart pounded in her chest, emotions swirling. Anger at being deceived, confusion about who Liam really was, and beneath it all, a growing understanding of why he had kept this secret. "Now that you know the truth," Liam said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers, "I have to ask." He lifted a hand to gently cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tear that had fallen. "Do you still love me?" Sophia's breath caught in her throat. It was a simple question, but the answer would change everything. Did she love him for his kindness, his patience, the way he had helped her rebuild her life? Or was she, like everyone else in his past, only seeing the wealth he could provide? As she looked into his eyes, those same eyes that had watched her across a bar on the worst night of her life, she knew the truth. Money didn't matter. He did. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears. "Ido." The rooftop was bathed in the golden glow of fairy lights, their delicate radiance reflecting off crystal glasses and silver cutlery. The soft hum of jazz floated through the evening air, mingling with the gentle breeze that carried the scent of fresh roses and the warm flicker of candles. A single table stood in the center, draped in crisp white linen, surrounded by an urban garden of potted flowers and vines. Sophia stared in awe, her breath catching at the scene before her. It was breathtaking, too perfect, too unreal after weeks of microwave dinners at their scratched kitchen table. She turned to Liam, who stood beside her, hands tucked into his pockets, watching her reaction with quiet amusement. In his tailored charcoal suit, he looked different, not just well-dressed, but at ease in a way she'd never seen before, as if he'd stepped back into a skin he'd temporarily abandoned. "You did all this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smirked, that familiar expression now carrying new meaning. "I had some help." Sophia let out a breathless laugh, shaking her head. "You know, most regular guys don't have access to rooftop venues and private chefs." Guilty as charged, Liam chuckled, reaching for her hand and leading her toward the table. He pulled out her chair with practiced ease, a gesture that now revealed years of ingrained etiquette rather than simply good manners. The dinner was perfect, delicate bites of gourmet dishes that reminded Sophia of the world she'd left behind, yet somehow tasted better here, with him. Liam expertly poured a rich, velvety wine into her glass, his movements fluid and confident. The Liam who struggled with their temperamental coffee maker had been replaced by a man who clearly knew his way around fine dining. Despite the beauty surrounding them, Sophia couldn't shake the emotions swirling inside her. A part of her still struggled to bridge the gap between the Liam she had come to love, the man who taught her how to budget, who held her when the power went out, and the billionaire heir he truly was. "You're quiet," Liam observed, watching her closely over the rim of his wine glass. Sophia sighed, setting down her fork. "I guess I'm still processing everything." Liam nodded, his expression softening. "Because of the money?" Sophia hesitated, then nodded. It's not that I care about wealth, Liam, she said carefully, tried to articulate feelings she was still sorting through herself. It's just this world of yours, the one you walked away from. It's the world I lost. The world that rejected me. She looked down at her hands. What if I don't fit in? What if I'm not enough for Liam Sterling? Even if I was enough for just Liam? Liam leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. You think I care about any of that? Before she could respond, Liam suddenly stood up. Then, to her astonishment, he dropped to one knee beside her chair. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as Liam pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and slowly flipped it open, revealing a stunning diamond ring that shimmered under the rooftop lights. Unlike her previous engagement ring, a gaudy statement piece Daniel had selected to showcase his wealth, this one was elegant, timeless, with a center stone that caught the light without overwhelming her finger. Sophia, he said softly, his voice steady but full of emotion, I don't want to just be the guy you married in a drunken moment. He took a breath, his eyes never leaving hers. I want to be the man you choose, the man who stands beside you not because of chance, but because you want me there. Sophia felt tears well up in her eyes, not from sadness or confusion, but from a sudden, overwhelming clarity. Liam took her hand in his thumb gently stroking her skin. Forget the money, he murmured. Forget the name. I'm just Liam. You're Liam. If you'll have me. A tear slipped down her cheek because deep down, she had always known. From that first night in the bar, through every small kindness, every moment of patience as she learned to stand on her own, he had always been hers, and she had always been his. The money, the name, the secrets, none of it mattered in the face of what they had built together. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes. Liam's face lit up with a joy so genuine it took her breath away. In one swift motion, he slid the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms. And just like that, she wasn't lost anymore. She had found home. The grand ballroom of the Sterling Foundation was filled with warm golden light, the sound of soft music blending with the hum of conversation. Guests moved elegantly around the room, raising glasses of champagne in celebration of the foundation's launch. A dream turned into reality. The Sterling Foundation, dedicated to helping women who had been abandoned, mistreated, or left to rebuild their lives alone, was already making waves in philanthropic circles. Because Sophia knew what it felt like to lose everything, and now she had a chance to give back, to offer hope to others who had once stood where she had. Liam stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, his presence grounding her as she smiled at the guests. In the 6 months since he had revealed his true identity, their lives had transformed. They'd moved into a penthouse that somehow managed to feel like home despite its luxury, perhaps because Liam had insisted they bring their old couch, claiming it was properly broken in. She had never imagined her life would turn out like this. Not just wealthy, but meaningful. Not just loved, but understood. Then, as they greeted the attendees, a familiar voice made Sophia freeze. Well, isn't this a surprise? She turned, and there they were, Daniel and Lisa. Only they were different now. Gone was Daniel's arrogance, his confidence. His once perfectly tailored suit now looked slightly worn, the usual smirk on his face replaced with bitterness. And Lisa, who had once draped herself in luxury, stood beside him with an uneasy expression, as if the ground beneath her was no longer stable. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Daniel forced a smile, but there was something desperate in his eyes. You've certainly moved up in the world. Lisa scoffed, though the sound lacked her former confidence. Enjoy it while it lasts. Sophia didn't react. She simply tilted her head, studying them with the calm assurance of someone who no longer needed their approval. I heard about Lisa's father's company. Tough luck. Liam, who had remained silent, now finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Business is unpredictable. One wrong move, and everything crumbles. The unspoken message hung in the air between them. Daniel's betrayal of Sophia for a more advantageous connection had backfired spectacularly when Lisa's father's company collapsed amid scandal and debt. Lisa's jaw clenched, and Daniel's face darkened. They had once looked down on Sophia. Now, they were the ones struggling to stay afloat in the social waters they had once navigated with such confidence. Sophia squeezed Liam's hand and smiled, not with malice, but with genuine peace. You know what? I think I should actually thank you, Daniel. He frowned. For what? For leaving me that night, she said, her voice steady, confident. Because if you hadn't, I wouldn't have found the best decision of my life. She turned to Liam, her heart full. Him. Daniel said nothing. Lisa huffed and dragged him away, disappearing into the crowd. Sophia let out a small laugh, shaking her head. Poetic justice, don't you think? Liam smirked, that same smirk that had first caught her attention across a dimly lit bar. I prefer to call it karma. Later that evening, as they swayed together on the dance floor, Liam held her close, his lips brushing her ear. Happy, he murmured. Sophia smiled, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. More than I ever thought possible. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, how she had lost everything she thought mattered, only to gain what truly did. How Liam had walked away from wealth and privilege to find something real, and how together they had built something neither could have found alone. You know, she said softly, for someone who claims to have never planned any of this, you've done a pretty good job of sweeping me off my feet. Liam laughed, the sound rumbling in his chest. I'm adoptable. That you are, she agreed, looking up at him with a smile. Thank you. His brow furrowed slightly. For what? For seeing me, she said simply. Not the socialite, not the penniless ex-fiancé. Just me. Liam's eyes softened. That's the easiest thing I've ever done, he murmured, pulling her closer. And I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. As they danced beneath the glittering chandeliers, surrounded by the foundation that would help countless women rebuild their lives, Sophia realized that sometimes life's greatest heartbreaks lead to its most unexpected blessings. She had lost everything, her wealth, her status, even her family. But in that loss, she had found true love, found herself, and built a life more meaningful than she had ever imagined. Liam had never needed his fortune to win her heart. He had only ever needed to be himself. And together, they had turned pain into purpose, creating a legacy of kindness that would help countless others. In the end, that was the greatest wealth of all. The sun cast golden rays over the private beach resort, waves gently lapping at the pristine shore. Sophia sat under a large sun umbrella, a book forgotten in her lap as she watched two little figures, one boy, one girl, run toward the water, their delighted squeals carrying on the warm breeze. Behind them, Liam jogged, pretending to struggle to keep up with their energetic pace. Their twins, Leo and Lionel, had just turned 5, a perfect blend of their parents with Sophia's honey blonde hair and Liam's perceptive dark eyes. Watching them now, building sandcastles with the focused determination they'd inherited from both parents, Sophia's heart swelled with a contentment she once thought impossible. 7 years had passed since that fateful night when her world had shattered at an engagement party, only to be rebuilt into something far more beautiful than she could have imagined. The Sterling Foundation had grown beyond their expectations, providing housing, education, and career opportunities for women rebuilding their lives after personal devastation. What had begun as Sophia's passion project had evolved into one of the most respected philanthropic organizations in the country. Liam jogged back to her, sand clinging to his feet, his simple linen shirt unbuttoned at the collar. A far cry from both the struggling consultant she'd first married and the polished billionaire he'd revealed himself to be. He'd found balance, just as she had. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, dropping onto the lounge chair beside her. Sophia smiled, reaching for his hand. "Just thinking about how far we've come." Liam followed her gaze to their children, who were now engaged in serious negotiations about the proper moat depth for their sandcastle. "There's something else, aren't they?" "They're perfect," she murmured, even when Leo decided to redecorate our living room with permanent markers last week. Liam teased. "Especially then," Sophia laughed. "He said he was making it prettier for Mommy. How could I be mad?" Liam's expression softened as he studied her face. You know, I still wake up sometimes and can't believe this is real. What part? Sophia asked, turning to face him. The part where you're no longer hiding your identity, or the part where you're stuck with a wife who still can't properly operate the espresso machine you bought? The part where I found you, he said simply. Where we found each other. Sophia's breath caught at the sincerity in his voice. After 7 years, he still looked at her the same way he had across that rooftop dinner table, like she was the most precious thing in his world. Daddy, Mommy, look, Lionel called, pointing excitedly at their sandcastle, which now featured a precariously balanced seashell as a flag. Coming, princess, Liam called back, standing and extending his hand to Sophia. Shall we? As they walked hand in hand toward their children, Sophia remembered a conversation they'd had years ago, shortly after they'd moved into their first real home together. Not his family's mansion or a sterile penthouse, but a warm, comfortable house by the sea where their children could grow up with sand between their toes and stars visible at night. Do you ever miss it? She had asked him. The power, the influence, the sterling name opening every door. Liam had considered her question seriously before answering. I never walked away from the power or the influence, he'd said. I just changed how I use it. Before, it was about profit margins and market share. Now, he gestured around them, at the home they were building together. Now it's about this, about making a difference that matters. That philosophy had guided them ever since. The sterling wealth remained vast, but they lived well below their means, channeling resources into the foundation, into sustainable business practices, into creating a world their children could be proud to inherit. Mommy, can you help me find more shells? Leo asked, his small hand reaching for hers as they approached the sandcastle. Of course, sweetheart, Sophia smiled, letting him pull her toward the shoreline while Liam crouched beside Lina to admire her architectural innovations. As she helped her son collect tiny, perfect shells, Sophia caught sight of a young couple walking along the beach, the woman's face tight with worry despite the beautiful surroundings. She recognized that look, the strain of pretending everything was fine when your world was crumbling. Leo, honey, why don't you take these shells to Daddy and Lina? I'll be right there. Her son nodded, carefully cradling his treasures as he ran back to the sandcastle. Sophia approached the couple, who seemed startled when she stopped near them. I'm sorry to intrude, Sophia said gently, but I want to give you this. She pulled a business card from the pocket of her beach cover-up. She always carried them, never knowing when she might meet someone who needed what the foundation offered. The woman took it hesitantly, her eyes widening slightly as she recognized the Sterling Foundation logo. Whatever you're going through, Sophia continued quietly, you don't have to face it alone. We can help. The woman's eyes filled with tears. How did you know? She whispered. Sophia smiled softly. Because I've been there. Sometimes the moments that break us open are the ones that let the light in. After a brief conversation and a promise that the foundation would be in touch, Sophia walked back to her family, her heart full. Liam looked up as she approached, a question in his eyes. Foundation business, she explained with a smile. He nodded, understanding immediately. Mommy, sit here. Lionel patted the sand beside her. We need a queen for our castle. Sophia laughed and settled beside her daughter, helping to add the finishing touches to their masterpiece. As the afternoon sun warmed her shoulders, she looked at her family, at Liam showing Leo how to dig a proper moat, at Lina concentrating as she arranged shells in a perfect pattern, and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. Once, she had defined herself by her family name, by the man she would marry, by the social circle she moved in. Now, she defined herself by the lives she touched, by the love she gave, by the family she and Liam had created together. Later, as the twins napped in their beach bungalow and she and Liam walked along the shore, fingers intertwined, Sophia broke their comfortable silence. Happy? She asked, echoing the question he had asked her years ago on their foundation's opening night. Liam squeezed her hand, bringing it to his lips. More than I ever thought possible, he said, returning her own words to her. You were the best decision I ever made. Sophia leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "Even when I burned dinner 3 nights in a row last month." "Especially then," he laughed. "It gave me the perfect excuse to order that pizza you pretend not to love." "I maintain that pizza should not have pineapple on it," she said with mock seriousness. "It's a culinary abomination," says the woman who once thought ramen noodles were supposed to be crunchy. "That was 7 years ago. Will you ever let me live it down?" "Never," Liam grinned, pulling her close. "It's one of my favorite memories, you standing in our tiny kitchen, looking at that package like it had personally offended you." Sophia laughed, remembering how far she'd come from the woman who couldn't boil water to someone who now managed a household, co-ran a foundation, and had recently published a cookbook for women starting over. Simple, nourishing recipes that required minimal equipment and budget. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, they turned back toward their bungalow, toward their sleeping children, toward the life they had built together. "You know," Liam said thoughtfully, "when I disappeared from my old life, I was running away from something. I never expected to find something to run toward instead." Sophia smiled up at him. "And what were you running toward?" His eyes, warm and certain, met hers. "You. Us. This life we've made." And in that moment, with the setting sun gilding the edges of the world and the man she loved by her side, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as our worst heartbreaks. She had lost everything she thought she needed, only to gain everything she truly wanted. And so Sophia's journey proves that sometimes life's greatest heartbreaks lead us to our most unexpected blessings. She lost everything, her wealth, her status, even her family. But in that loss, she found true love, found herself, and built a life more meaningful than she had ever imagined. Liam had never needed his fortune to win her heart. He had only ever needed to be himself. Together, they turned pain into purpose, creating a legacy of kindness that would help countless others. And in the end, that was the greatest wealth of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more inspiring tales of love, resilience, and second chances. See you in the next story. 2 years later, the Sterling family gathered in the spacious living room of their coastal home, the evening light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Sophia sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, helping 7-year-old Lina arrange flowers in a small vase while Leo sprawled nearby, absorbed in building an elaborate structure with magnetic tiles. "Do you think Grandma will like these?" Lina asked, carefully positioning a yellow daisy. "She'll love them," Sophia assured her, smoothing her daughter's hair. The word grandma still felt strange on her tongue, not referring to Eleanor Davenport, who had remained coldly distant despite multiple attempts at reconciliation, but to Mary Ann Sterling, Liam's mother. The doorbell chimed, and Leo jumped up. "They're here," he exclaimed, racing toward the entryway with Lina close behind. Sophia rose more slowly, smoothing her simple linen dress. Even after 9 years of marriage, family gatherings still triggered a momentary flutter of anxiety, a ghost from her former life when such occasions were performances rather than celebrations. Liam appeared from his study, catching her hand as she passed. "You okay?" he asked quietly, always attuned to her subtle shifts in mood. She smiled, squeezing his fingers. "Perfect." The evening unfolded with the comfortable rhythm they'd established over years of building their own traditions. Mary Ann Sterling, who had reconnected with Liam shortly after the twins were born, brought homemade apple pie and stories that made the children giggle. Thomas Chun, Liam's former business partner and now the operational director of the Sterling Foundation, arrived with his wife and their toddler son, who immediately demanded to join Leo's building project. As Sophia moved around the kitchen, preparing coffee and cutting slices of pie, she caught glimpses of her life through the doorway. Liam teaching the children a card game, Thomas discussing the Foundation's latest initiative, the easy laughter and genuine warmth that filled their home. This was wealth of a kind she'd never understood in her previous life. The richness of authentic connection, of purpose shared, of love freely given and received. Later, after the children had been tucked into bed with stories and kisses, the adults gathered on the wide deck overlooking the ocean. The conversation turned, as it often did, to the foundation's work. The new shelter in Chicago is exceeding all expectations, Thomas reported, his expression animated. The employment program has already placed 15 women in stable jobs. And the child care center? Sophia asked, leaning forward. This had been her special project, ensuring that women rebuilding their lives had safe, nurturing places for their children while they worked or studied. Fully operational and already at capacity, Thomas confirmed. Your curriculum design is being implemented across all our locations now. Sophia felt a glow of satisfaction. Her education in art history had found unexpected application in developing creative programs for children who had experienced trauma, programs that helped them process emotions through art, storytelling, and play. I've been thinking, Liam said, setting down his glass, about expanding the youth mentorship program nationally. Marian nodded thoughtfully. There's certainly need. So many of these children have never had positive male role models. The conversation continued, plans and possibilities unfolding like the waves below their deck. Constant, powerful, full of potential. This was how they spent most evenings, not at glittering galas or exclusive clubs, but engaged in work that mattered, surrounded by people who shared their vision. After their guest had departed and Marianne had retired to the guest suite, Sophia and Liam stood at the railing, watching moonlight dance across the water. I got a call today, Sophia said quietly. From Eleanor. Liam turned to her, surprise evident in his expression. Your mother? What did she want? Sophia took a deep breath. She's ill. Cancer. The prognosis isn't good. I'm sorry, Liam said softly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. How do you feel about it? It was a complex question. Eleanor Davenport had cut her daughter from her life without hesitation, had refused to meet her grandchildren, had returned every letter and gift unopened. Yet the news had still landed like a physical blow. Confused, Sophia admitted. Sad, angry still after all this time. But also, she paused, searching for the right words. Also strangely grateful. Grateful, she nodded slowly. If she hadn't rejected me that night, I might never have found the strength to build a life on my own terms. I might never have met you, never discovered what I'm capable of beyond being someone's perfect daughter or suitable wife. Liam was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her shoulder. Will you see her? Yes, Sophia said, the decision crystallizing as she spoke. Not for her, or even for me, really, but for Leo and Lina. I want them to understand that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let it determine your future. Liam pressed a kiss to her temple. You continue to amaze me. You know that? She smiled up at him. Even after all these years. Especially after all these years. The following weekend, Sophia stood in the hushed corridor of a private hospital, steeling herself before entering her mother's room. Liam had offered to come, but this was something she needed to do alone. Eleanor Davenport looked diminished against the white hospital linens. Her once immaculate appearance faded. When she saw Sophia, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, surprise, perhaps even a shadow of regret. You came, she said, her voice weaker than Sophia remembered. I did. Sophia moved to the bedside chair, setting down the small photo album she had brought. How are you feeling? The conversation was stilted at first, formal exchanges about treatments and prognosis. But gradually, as afternoon light shifted across the room, something else emerged. Not warmth, exactly, but a fragile honesty. I was wrong, Eleanor said finally, her fingers plucking restlessly at the blanket. About many things, but especially about you. Sophia stayed silent, allowing her mother the space to continue. I saw your foundation featured in Forbes last month, Eleanor went on. Your work with those women and children, it's remarkable. Thank you, Sophia said simply. And your family? A hesitation. Your husband and the children? Sophia opened the photo album, turning it so her mother could see. This is Leo and Lina. They're 7 now. Eleanor studied the photographs, the twins building sandcastles, opening Christmas presents, laughing with Liam. They're beautiful, she murmured. They have your smile. They'd like to meet you, Sophia said carefully. If you're open to that. Something that might have been hope flickered across Eleanor's face. I would like that very much. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't reconciliation or healing or any of the neat resolutions that stories promised. But it was a beginning, fragile and uncertain, but real. As Sophia drove home along the coastal highway, she felt a sense of completion she hadn't realized she was missing. The cycle that had begun that night at the St. Regis Hotel had come full circle, not ending where it began, but transforming into something new. She pulled into their driveway just as the sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the front garden where Liam and the twins were engaged in what appeared to be an elaborate game of tag. At the sight of her car, they paused, three pairs of eyes turning toward her with identical expressions of love and welcome. Sophia stepped out into the warm evening air, into the life she had built from the ashes of the one that had been taken from her. As Leo and Lina raced toward her, their excited voices overlapping as they shared the day's adventures, she caught Liam's gaze over their heads. In his eyes, she saw the same wonder she felt, that out of all the paths they might have taken, all the lives they might have lived, somehow they had found their way to this one, together. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house had settled into peaceful quiet, Sophia and Liam sat in their favorite spot on the deck, a single blanket draped over their shoulders against the night's chill. I've been thinking, Sophia said, her head resting against his shoulder. About writing a book. About the foundation? Liam asked. Not exactly. More about the journey. About losing everything and finding something better. About how sometimes the things we think we want aren't the things we actually need. Liam was silent for a moment, considering. A memoir. Something like that, she agreed. But not just my story. The stories of all the women we've worked with through the foundation. How they rebuilt their lives, found their strength. I think it's a brilliant idea, Liam said, his voice warm with pride. You've always had a way of finding the light in dark places. Sophia smiled, thinking of how far they'd come from that night in a dimly lit bar. A broken-hearted woman and a man in hiding, both searching for something real in a world of illusions. You know what still amazes me, she said softly. What's that? That the worst moment of my life led me to the best decision I ever made. Liam turned to face her, cupping her cheek in his palm. In the moonlight, his eyes held the same intensity they had when he'd proposed on that rooftop years ago, as if, despite everything they'd built together, he still couldn't quite believe his good fortune. I love you, he said simply. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. As Sophia leaned into his embrace, she thought about the book she would write, about the women who would read it and perhaps find hope in her story. She would tell them the truth, that sometimes life strips everything away not to punish you, but to show you what remains when the external trappings are gone. That sometimes the path to finding yourself begins with losing everything you thought defined you. And that sometimes, in the most unexpected places, with the most unexpected people, you find exactly what you never knew you were looking for. In the years that followed, Sophia's book became a bestseller, touching lives far beyond the reach of the foundation itself. The Sterling family continued to grow and evolve. Leo developing his father's head for business and his mother's compassion. Lina showing early signs of artistic talent and fierce determination. Eleanor Davenport did meet her grandchildren before she passed away, those final months bringing a measure of peace and connection that had seemed impossible years before. And Daniel and Lisa, after years of financial struggles, eventually found their own path to redemption, not through wealth or status, but through the humbling work of starting over. As for Sophia and Liam, they remained each other's constant, partners in work, in parenting, in the quiet moments that make up a life well lived. Their love story, born in the ashes of heartbreak and deception, had blossomed into something neither could have imagined that fateful night when a drunken proposal changed the course of both their lives. And so Sophia's journey proves that sometimes life's greatest heartbreaks lead us to our most unexpected blessings. She lost everything, her wealth, her status, even her family, but in that loss, she found true love, found herself, and built a life more meaningful than she had ever imagined. Liam had never needed his fortune to win her heart. He had only ever needed to be himself. Together, they turned pain into purpose, creating a legacy of kindness that would help countless others. And in the end, that was the greatest wealth of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more inspiring tales of love, resilience, and second chances. See you in the next story.